Alright trainers, I'm some northern guy, in dire need of a shave actually. Now we all know the story of Ash and Pikachu, right? How they were brought together by fate, how they travelled the Pokemon world and formed an unbreakable bond. But what if Ash and Pikachu never met? What if Ash never overslept and made it to Professor Oak's lab on time and chose a different Pokemon for his starter? Well, it would actually make the whole series very interesting, and that is exactly what we're going to discuss in today's video.
Where's north from here?
So as you probably know, or you should know, Ash arrives to Professor Oak's lab late in the anime, and because of that, the 3 Kanto starters have already been chosen, and he begs Professor Oak for a Pokemon, and he gives him Pikachu, kinda against his better judgment. But what if Ash was the first, or one of the first trainers to get to the lab and had free choice over the Kanto starters? Well, in the anime, Ash tells Professor Oak that he's been mulling it over and he gave it lots of thought, and he finally decided that his first Pokemon would be Squirtle. So that is exactly what's going to happen in this scenario. Ash chooses Squirtle. But hold on, what about Gary? Isn't he meant to get Squirtle? Well, I always took it that Gary was the 3rd kid to get his starter from Pallet Town, since by the time Ash arrives late, Gary is only just leaving, and the 2 kids who got Bulbasaur and Charmander are nowhere to be seen. They've already left Pallet Town. Or at least that's what I took from it. So in this what if scenario, Gary actually arrives after Ash has already chosen Squirtle. Now there's 2 ways we could go from here. We could say that Gary is the one who gets Pikachu since he's last to arrive at the lab, or we could say that he gets there early enough to still have a choice, and being really annoyed and angry that Ash got to pick first, he chooses Bulbasaur to have an advantage over Ash's Squirtle, just like Blue does in the games. Either way won't change the rest of this story, so yeah, take your pick. In fact, I'm going to ask you guys to vote for that at the end, but hang on for now. So Ash would set off on his journey with Squirtle instead of Pikachu, and the start of his adventure would play out completely differently. For starters, he'll get to Viridian City much faster, because he isn't literally dragging Pikachu around everywhere. And Squirtle would fully obey and listen to Ash, unlike Pikachu. And because of this, I think Ash would grow as a trainer and grow in skill and confidence much faster than he does in the original story. For starters, he would catch that Pidgey from the first episode. Remember the one that Pikachu wouldn't help him catch? Yeah, well, Squirtle's all up for battling alongside him, so he catches Pidgey. This means his first Pokemon capture isn't Caterpie in Viridian Forest. He actually catches a Pokemon very early on into his journey, which naturally would give him a big confidence boost. He also wouldn't get chased by the flock of Spearows, since he'd have no reason to start lobbing rocks at the Pidgey, accidentally hitting one of the Spearows and pissing off the rest of the flock. And that means he would never run into Misty. That is quite a big change, and it's going to have a bit of a knock-on effect across the rest of the story. Plus, it is entirely possible that with Squirtle by his side, Ash would catch more Pokemon early on in his journey. Maybe the Rattata that stole some of his food, and perhaps he caught a Spearow anyway, since they were clearly all around the area. But for the sake of ease, let's just say that Pidgey is the only Pokemon he catches between Pallet Town and Viridian City. Once at Viridian City, Ash would heal up his Pokemon and set off for Viridian Forest. One huge difference here is that since he wasn't delayed and Pikachu wasn't critically injured, he'd never meet Team Rocket when they attacked the Pokemon Center. He's long gone by now. Which, you know, is kind of too bad for the Pokemon Center and Nurse Joy, but hey, it's not Ash's fault. But he could still run into Team Rocket a couple of times on his journey. Like, sometimes they just happen to be where he is. They're not always following him. In Viridian Forest, Ash would still catch Caterpie, but he wouldn't get Pidgeotto. Instead, he'd take it on with his own Pidgey, which would obviously get battered, and Squirtle would come in to save the day and chase Pidgeotto off. Ash, being his normal kind-hearted self, would console Pidgey and tell it not to worry and to never give up, and one day it will be just as strong, if not stronger, than that Pidgeotto. And in true Ash fashion, he and his team would do some special training in Viridian Forest, and this is where Caterpie would evolve into Metapod, instead of by defeating Team Rocket. The events with Samurai would play out as normal, with Ash failing to catch Weedle, easily beating Samurai in a battle, and then Beedrill attacking them shortly after. Metapod would still get taken, and it would then still evolve into Butterfree. At Pewter City, the battle against Brock would be a breeze for Ash, because, you know, Squirtle. But he's still a novice. He's a bit more of a better trainer now, but he still doesn't quite get type matchups. So he sends Pidgey out against Geodude. which of course gets creamed, and Squirtle comes in and one-shots it with a water gun. Then after a tough battle with Onyx, because don't forget it's a giant rock snake against a tiny little turtle, Squirtle wins and Ash gets his first badge. Legitimately this time. Now it would be easy to say that Brock doesn't go with Ash on his journey, but I still think he would. He'd be inspired by how Ash treats his Pokemon, how he's so kind to them, and he'd feel a connection with Ash, so I still think he'd go with him. From here the rest of the story would play out more or less the same, with just a few differences. For example, Ash wouldn't battle Misty for the Cascade badge, instead he'd battle her sisters and win quite easily because all they had was Goldeen and Seal at the time. Pidgey and Butterfree could just fly high out of range of Goldeen and Seal, and Squirtle could easily match both of them in the water. We also wouldn't get the whole Pikachu versus Raichu battle. Instead, I think Surge would goad Ash into using his Squirtle. Not because he knows he has a Squirtle, he'd say something like that only his strongest Pokemon would stand a chance against Raichu and that he better give it his all. And against Brock's very sound advice that water is no good against electric types, Ash would still use Squirtle because it's his partner Pokemon and they have a bond and he believes in him. And as you might expect, he gets wrecked pretty badly, just like in the anime. Okay Raichu, hit him with the Thunderbolt! We'd then see Ash training with Squirtle, and during this training it would evolve into Wartortle. And there'd be some bullshit plot armor that now that it's evolved and its shell is stronger, if it goes inside its shell it can kind of shrug off electric attacks a bit better, and it would dispatch Raichu with a Skull Bash. And I like to think that around this time his Pidgey would finally evolve into Pidgeotto and be much stronger than his Pidgeotto from the original story. The rest of the story and the gym leaders would pretty much play out in the same fashion as the anime. There'd still be some rematches, like where he loses to Sabrina and has to go and get a ghost type and then come back and try and beat her again. Although this time, he'd actually beat her instead of just making her laugh to submission. He's a better trainer, yeah, but he's still Ash. Of course, there would be no Misty, as we've said, and a much more confident and competent Ash, since he didn't really suffer any setbacks early on. I think he'd still catch the same Pokemon as well, and maybe even a few extras, you know? Like actually catching Haunter. That still annoys me to this day, man. Like, what a freaking idiot. He'd get Bulbasaur from the Hidden Village, he'd still rescue Charmander after Damien abandoned it, but he wouldn't get the Squirtle squad leader, because, you know, he chose Squirtle as his starter. He'd also still catch Krabby, and this time it would be his 6th Pokemon, not his 7th, because don't forget, no Pikachu, so he'd use Krabby on his team. And that means it would evolve into Kingler so much faster than it does in the anime. Butterfree would still be released to fly off across the sea, and Ash would still get Primeape, but I think there'd be a big difference here. With Ash being a better, stronger trainer, he'd be able to defeat Primeape a lot easier and earn its trust and respect a lot faster as well. So at the start of the P1 Grand Prix fighting type tournament, Primeape already listens to Ash, and afterwards, he chooses to stay with Ash. He doesn't want to stay with Anthony to train, which means Primeape is here to stay. Brilliant! Winds me up that he never went back for that stupid Primeape. Like, Pidgeot was bad enough, but Primeape? Mate! It was ridiculous, man. Get that thing back, it's bloody awesome. Ash's Pokemon would keep evolving. Wartortle into Blastoise, Charmander into Charmeleon and Charizard, just like it does in the anime, only this time it respects Ash from the get-go. And Pidgeotto would evolve into Pidgeot just before the Pokemon League. It could be a really emotional moment because it's finally become so strong and powerful, just like Ash told it could, all the way back in Viridian Forest. As for Bulbasaur, well, after seeing Squirtle and Charmander both grow and evolve and get stronger with Ash, I think it would allow itself to evolve into Ivysaur. But I don't think it should become a Venusaur though. For starters, if Gary chooses Bulbasaur to get the upper hand against Ash, then he would have a Venusaur eventually. And even though Ash is a better trainer this time round, I think giving him all 3 fully evolved Kanto starters is just a bit much. He'd still get Muck though, and 30 Tauros, just for the humour. And another big change I can see is that without Misty or Team Rocket following Ash everywhere, there wouldn't be as big of an argument over who got to keep Togepi. And I think Ash would end up keeping it. He did find the egg after all. So by the time he gets to the Pokemon League, he has a lot of fully evolved, really strong Pokemon to choose from. He would be an incredibly skilled battler to his counterpart from the original story. And as for the league itself, Well, I'll leave that up to you. Could this version of Ash win the Pokemon League at the Indigo Plateau? Or would he still get bested by Richie or someone else? Let me know what you think down in the comments, and like I said near the start of the video, let me know if you think Gary would choose Bulbasaur, or would he be the one to get Pikachu? And who knows, maybe I might do a continuation of this what if story, taking your thoughts into account. I had a lot of fun coming up with this what if story, and hopefully you guys enjoyed watching this video, and if you did, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and click the bell so you never miss a video. And you can also follow me over on social media to stay updated as well. I will see you next time, but until then, thanks very much for watching, stay safe, keep training, and have a good one. See you later.